We are so back. We are so back, baby. Two incredible, and I do mean incredible, dual races. Both had a last lap pass for the win. Both came down to inches, the last few feet of the race to lock in the last two spots for the Daytona 500. We almost saw massive upsets in terms of who made the field. We saw some great racing. We saw some controversy. We saw a pissed off Ryan Blaney in his post-race interview. We saw it all in these two dual races. And if it's a hint at just a little bit of what we're getting on Sunday or Monday, depending on the weather, it's going to be a good Daytona 500. I don't like to speak ahead in terms of that stuff, but I'm so hyped up right now that I'm excited for Sunday or Monday, whatever day this race is going to be. But let's talk about these Daytona duels. Duel number one. It was a mostly uneventful duel, as duel number one always is. Duel number one is the duel that never does anything wrong. It never has a wreck. It never has a spin. It's 60 laps of green flag action with the occasional, fuel strategy or pit road penalty that costs someone a spot in the Daytona 500. It's always duel two that's chaotic, has all the big wrecks, has all the chaos. But duel one today produced a little bit of chaos. With about 10 laps to go in this duel, we saw pit stops happen. We saw everything happen up to this point. No real shocks. There was a big moment with Tyler Reddick, Austin Dillon, and I can't remember who the third car was. I think it was Todd Gilliland. But Reddick was trying to get off to pit, and he just got tapped in the back bumper by Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon had to go up the track to avoid completely wiping him out. Hits Todd Gilliland. Dillon had right side damage. Gilliland had right side damage, but no caution because Tyler Reddick was able to keep it together, keep it straight, get on pit road. Everyone was fine. But then after the pits had cycled around with about 10 laps to go, it seemed like, okay, nothing's going to happen except maybe a last lap pass for the win. There's not going to be a big wreck. Jimmie Johnson is 8 seconds ahead of JJ Yeley for the final spot in the Daytona 500. There's no real controversy here. Or there's no real, big, tense, nervous moments. And then Fox cuts to commercial. I think this was about 11 or 12 to go. And they come back from commercial, and Jimmie Johnson is spinning, and everyone's like, oh my God, Jimmie Johnson just went from there's no way he misses it to how damaged is his car, and JJ Yeley's in prime position to make the Daytona 500. Well, it turns out the field just kind of stacked up when everyone was getting sorted out, and it's a accordion effect throughout the field. One car gets turned, Daniel Hemrick gets turned, everyone else tries to avoid it. Austin Dillon, maybe, Jimmie Johnson, and someone else all went spinning, but no damage to the 84 car, or no massive damage to the 84 car. So they were able to continue on, but they did have to restart behind the number 44 of JJ Yeley. JJ Yeley, who after the race confirmed that he just got the phone call Monday to drive for NY Racing today and yesterday. He had a shot just 3 days after getting the call to drive in the Daytona 500 qualifying races to try to make the Daytona 500 for this part-time team. He looked like he was in great position to make the Daytona 500. Him and Jimmie Johnson battled valiantly. They tried their hardest. It even got a little intense there. They almost wrecked each other once on the front stretch, but ultimately it came down to the last lap. JJ Yeley was ahead of Jimmie Johnson. It looked like, oh my goodness, it's going to happen. A big upset. JJ Yeley in a part-time NY Racing car is going to beat Jimmie Johnson, 7-time champion in a Legacy Motor Club Toyota for the final spot in the Daytona 500? What? And then turn 4 happened. The outside line got stacked up. JJ Yeley had an option. He could either take the momentum he had and jump to the outside of Ross Chastain, or he could stick with Chastain and push him and make Jimmie Johnson behind him make that move. Yeley ultimately decided to go around the outside, and he had no help behind him. Jimmie Johnson had basically a teammate behind him now that Legacy is Toyota. Martin Truex Jr. gave Jimmie Johnson a shove. Jimmie Johnson was able to get ahead of JJ Yeley by the time they got to the tri-oval, and Jimmie Johnson took one of the last 2 spots remaining in the Daytona 500 with that move. A 7-time champion makes a great move, yes, but at the same time, JJ Yeley was damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you go to the outside, Jimmie's got a teammate behind him that'll push him through. If you stay in line, Jimmie's going to jump to the outside of you, and there's a good chance that Truex goes with Jimmie. it was a tough place for J.J. Yeley to be at, but ultimately he had to make a decision. And the decision he made, you could say it was the wrong decision, but you could also argue both decisions were going to ultimately be the wrong decision. It's heartbreak for J.J. Yeley. I really do feel bad for him there. Short notice phone call to come race in the Daytona 500. Does his best to try to qualify for the race, was in position, but ultimately just fell short. Heartbreaking for him, but for Jimmie Johnson, he seemed stressed. He seemed nervous that he was about to miss the Daytona 500 to J.J. Yeley and NY Racing, but ultimately he just squeaks by. He just gets by. He just gets into the Daytona 500. It was a stressor for him. I'm sure he's going to sleep much better tonight than he did last night, but he may be take some recovery time tomorrow. Take the day off tomorrow to kind of get the heart rate back down, get everything back normal. Deep breaths. He's got a Daytona 500 to race for on Sunday or Monday. As for the rest of the race, Tyler Reddick, who almost wrecked early in this race, as I said earlier, out of nowhere went from 8th to 1st on the last lap, but nobody's talking about it because of what I just talked about for the last 4 minutes, and that is J.J. Yeley and Jimmie Johnson. Tyler Reddick, irrelevant all day, only led 1 lap in this race and won it. Let's talk about him. He will start 3rd in the Daytona 500, his first ever dual win, 23-11. I believe that's their first ever dual win. I don't know what to say. I'd have to watch the replay of the last lap from his perspective, but I read somewhere that he went from 8th to 1st on the last lap. If that's true, my goodness, that's not being talked about enough. But Tyler Reddick, way to keep your car clean, way to get a dual win. I think you get 10 bonus points with that, so some points towards the season already. He's tied for the points lead as of now. A great start to the season for Tyler Reddick and that 23-11 team. Starting 5th in the Daytona 500, finished 2nd in this race. All the guys in the finishing order of this race will start first. They'll be the odd numbers. They will be the odd numbers in the Daytona 500. So whoever won this race, Tyler Reddick is starting 3rd. Chase Elliott is starting 5th. Bowman 7th. Hocevar 9th, etc., except for Joey Logano, who will start on the pole. Chase Elliott finishes 2nd. Good finish for him. He gets to start up front in the Daytona 500. Alex Bowman starts 3rd. He was in position to finish very well in this race. Made a little bit of contact with teammate Kyle Larson that sent Larson to the back of the field. Nothing intentional, obviously, in terms of, malice. But, he did hit him at a wrong angle, sit Larson up the racetrack a bit. I don't think there's any bad blood. They're bad intentions, bad feelings. I think they'll get over it by tonight. But ultimately, Bowman, he's going to have a good starting spot in the Daytona 500. Rookie Carson Hocevar finishes 4th in his first ever dual race. Good finish for him. Eric Jones 5th. You guys, or the internet, not you guys, the watchers, some of you maybe, but the internet was freaking out yesterday after Toyota, their best car was 22nd in the single car qualifying. Well, they won both duels. I said yesterday, don't worry, they usually stink in the single car qualifying. They do better in the race. Hello? There you go. Okay, 5th, Eric Jones in the Legacy Motor Club car. 6th, Daniel Suarez. Joey Logano 7th, but he will start on pole for the Daytona 500. He kept his car clean. 8th, Ty Gibbs. 9th, Kyle Larson. 10th, Prosper, Texas' own Chris Buescher. 11th, Ross Chastain. 12th, Jimmie Johnson qualifies for the Daytona 500. He is the first ever NASCAR Hall of Famer to make the Daytona 500. Now, you may be confused by that statement. Usually, when someone makes the Hall of Fame, their racing career is over. They don't come back. They're far beyond their racing days. They are retired. They're not in the Daytona 500. Jimmie Johnson's different. Jimmie Johnson was just inducted into the Hall of Fame last month, and he is now racing in the Daytona 500 as an inducted member of the Hall of Fame. He's the first to ever do it. 13th, Ryan Preece. 14th, Martin Truex Jr. 15th, Corey LaJoie. 16th, J.J. Yeley. Once again, just heartbreak for him and that team. The last-minute phone call to come drive this car and comes up just short. One turn short. Just one tri-oval short, if you think about it. Ultimately, that Toyota teammate ended up helping Jimmie Johnson. But J.J. Yeley just put in a tough spot. Heartbreak for him, but 16th. 17th, Todd Gilliland led some laps in this race. 18th, Austin Dillon. 19th, Anthony Alfredo. 20th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. led a few laps in this race. And then 21st, Daniel Hemrick. He will be going to a backup car after that wreck. Now let's talk about duel number 2. Duel number 2. Oh my. While it was not a complete race of chaos, it did get chaotic there at the end. B.J. McLeod was up to 3rd place at one point. We got loud for McLeod up in here. But ultimately, it was a pretty normal-ish race. Nothing too chaotic yet. And then, once again, after pit stops, after everything had kind of settled down, huge wreck. Just huge. Ryan Blaney's car is destroyed. It's the at least the second consecutive race at Daytona that he has been right-reared into the fence due to a bad push, which he said in his post-race interview. He was mad. He used a bad word on TV, and he got clipped. I think he has a right to be mad, but it reminds me of in 2018 when Brad Keselowski, he was talking about all the bad blocks being thrown. Now it's the bad pushes being thrown, essentially. Ryan Blaney, the defending Cup Series champion, not happy and was taken out. Huge hit. Glad to see him walk away. As I said, a huge hit for Ryan Blaney. But that took out a lot of cars. I think we're going to see quite a few backups on Sunday. I already said Daniel Hemrick. Ryan Blaney for sure is going to a backup. We may see a few others. Nothing confirmed though yet, but those two are for sure the only ones I know as of right now. But as for the race winner, once again, last lap pass in a Toyota. Christopher Bell, my championship pick for 2024, by the way, starting out the year just right. He wins the Daytona duel, his first ever duel win, I believe. And he had to pass teammate Denny Hamlin to do it. And, Harrison Burton got so close to beating him. But Christopher Bell ultimately made the pass on his teammate, and because Austin Cindric made an aggressive move on Harrison Burton, Burton did not have the run to catch up to Bell, and Bell was able to win the duel. As for that final transfer spot, I mentioned B.J. McLeod earlier. He was in 3rd. He was in prime position. He was in prime position for a majority of this race, actually, to make the Daytona 500. And then the big crash happened. He was involved, had a little bit of damage, just like Jimmie Johnson. But they got that damage fixed. He restarted behind Kaz Grala. Kaz Grala in a better car in this situation. And B.J. McLeod actually was ahead of him for a bit. They were side by side for a bit. But ultimately, those last few corners just didn't go B.J. McLeod's way. He had a run at the end there, but they were 3 wide, 4 wide, and he would have had to wreck someone. He would have had to pile through someone in order to get ahead of Kaz Grala, and Kaz Grala just holds him off by a few feet. Once again, it was a really close finish between those two, but ultimately Kaz Grala holds on for that last spot in the Daytona 500. Let's look at the results of duel number 2. Christopher Bell is your winner. As I said, he gets some bonus points. Austin Cindric finishes 2nd. He will start 6th in the Daytona 500. Yeah, 6th. Denny Hamlin finishes 3rd in this duel. John Hunter Nemechek 4th. So Toyota in the top 4. Harrison Burton finishes 5th. Zane Smith 6th. Good job by the rookie. Brad Keselowski 7th. William Byron 8th. Was involved in that crash, but ultimately they were able to fix the car. 9th, Chase Briscoe. 10th, Justin Haley got some damage in that crash. 11th place, Bubba Wallace. 12th place, Kaz Grala makes it into the Daytona 500. Very good run for him. All 3 front row cars in the Daytona 500 on the day that they announced that they are forming an alliance with Team Penske and are a Tier 1 team now with Ford. 13th, AJ Allmendinger. 14th, B.J. McLeod. Heartbreak for B.J. McLeod. I am sad. I am going to cry myself to sleep tonight knowing that B.J. McLeod is not in the Daytona 500. I got loud for McLeod tonight. I thought he was going to do it. I really did. That team put forth a great effort regardless. A part-time team now, just sold their charter for a lot of money, but comes to the Daytona 500, no real pressure on their shoulders in terms of, financials, and just there to have fun. And they came really close to making the show. 15th, David Reagan. He was already locked into the show. 16th, Michael McDowell was leading for a good chunk of this race. Got shuffled out there late. 17th, Josh Berry. He had a mechanical problem late in this one. Ryan Blaney crashed. Kyle Busch crashed. Riley Herbst crashed. And Noah Gragson all crashed in that big crash. Blaney for sure in a backup. I'm not sure about the other 3. I will let you know in the community post. But that is all for the Daytona duels. Once again, fantastic racing tonight. We saw 3 wide, 2 wide, momentum changes, different leaders. I mean, everything you could ask for a super speedway race. I loved it. I loved every second of it. Let me know what you thought of both of these races in the comments. We got the Daytona 500 on Sunday. I'm going to give you a preview and a race pick tomorrow on the channel. I'm going to go tell you guys, as I said, my pick, but also give you some odds and whatnot. We've got a NASCAR Fantasy League. Make sure to sign up for that. Thank you guys for all the support on the channel. The past few weeks has been a great few weeks for the channel. So genuinely, thank you for the support. And I will see you guys in the next video tomorrow, previewing the Daytona 500.